Perm-a-Store, the turtle case guy. As long as I mentioned turtle something, he said that was okay. So he's the turtle case guy. So yeah, come on up.
So RFID has come up a couple of times here already, and there was a long listserv discussion, I don't know, a couple months ago, where I sort of volunteered to facilitate this thing because of the premise that I put up above is basically that, hey, this RFID and GPS and the GSM or cell tracking, those types of things are hot topics, but there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a range in this room of high expertise to novice, right? And I'm probably somewhere in the middle, and I'm facilitate this discussion. We don't sell RFID tags or anything like that. It's a logical addition to our product someday if it takes off, right? Whatever the case. But my motive here is to frankly figure out if there's to help this group figure out, is there a market for this stuff? Is it real? Does it solve? And I think the fundamental thing, and I think Jeff, you brought this up yesterday, is does it solve any problems, or the key problems? It certainly solves some problems, but does it solve the key problems, and is it practical? So, fundamentally, we'll go through very briefly, just basics on RFID and GPS, and a lot of people use them interchangeably. They're not anything like each other, right? They're very different. Applications, if any, I'm not convinced there is or there isn't, right? And then, if there are some issues, what would the requirements of those solutions be? So that's what we'd like to get out of this. This is going to be Alan's going to help me with taking some notes and things. But fundamentally, I want to set the stage a little bit to get everybody at least up to one basic level on what RFID and GPS are. Okay? So we're going to spend not even 5 minutes on that, but then we'll at least all be on the same page. So RFID, right, radio frequency identification, is basically all about tracking movement of items. Right? There's really two types of tags, passive and active. The only difference between the two is that an active tag has a battery on board, right? I brought some with. Right? This is what a passive tag looks like. There's many kinds of passive tags, right? This is one kind. This is a Gen 1. This is the type of tag we would consider putting on a cartridge. It needs to be smaller, but this is a passive tag, right? There's obviously no battery. These are the ones that go in the labels. And yesterday we talked about the one that's in an LTO cartridge today, right? That's a passive tag. All right? The idea of the passive tag is it gets its energy by going through a field of the antenna, right, of the hardware, right? It has to pass through the field to get energized, to wake up and tell it, oh yeah, tag 1, 2, 3, I just went through the door. All right? These are active tags, and they're a little thicker, right? Because they have a battery on board. And that battery either lasts a year or so and needs to be thrown away. Sometimes they can be rechargeable, or not so much with RFID side tags. These can be active or sending out a signal all the time. They don't have to be, but they can be, so you don't have to have it moving through a doorway to identify it, right? This thing can be beaconing at all times. So that's the fundamental difference between active and passive. Obviously, the actives are more expensive on a tag basis. The hardware is not much different, right? And then on the hardware side, you basically have an antenna that reads the information when it passes through. You've got an activator, which is what produces the field, right? The energy that wakes up the tag. The result is the same. It just was quicker, right? So primarily, it's an efficiency tool. I think it can translate into a security tool in the sense of this whole chain of custody or when an event happened. Okay? So the quick example of that is if you had your truck with an antenna hardware and a case went out of the truck that wasn't supposed to go out of the truck, you'd know exactly when that happened. So now it's a security tool in the sense that when I'm going to find that case, I know exactly where it fell out of the truck or was left or whatever. So it is security in that sense that it gives you more information when you're doing your detective work to find out where the heck this case of tapes is that we, lost. Okay, but do you understand the difference what I mean by security and efficiency there? Okay. GPS is far more security, and I'm not bringing up vehicle GPS at all here. This isn't, that's, I think, pretty well understood is a completely different function than we're talking about here. So the function we're talking about here is basically a transponder, and there's all sorts of them, right? The key element in this application is you need a transponder that has, I think they call them repeaters, or something that has a stronger signal and can find itself, right? These are used, it basically finds 3 satellites to figure out where it is in the world, right? It's a real neat technology. But of course, I think Gerard, you brought this up yesterday, if this is in the back of a Brinks truck, it's probably not going to get much of a signal, right? Because it doesn't have access to the satellites. This one, I did some testing on. It's a company in Canada, and there's others. This one has, what they call a stronger signal, and I stuck this in boxes and sent it all over the country via UPS. And you could find it, you have gaps where you couldn't see where it was, but you'd find it, it would show up every once in a while, or more than once in a while. You'd only lose it once in a while, frankly, and that was in a box in a UPS truck. So I thought, that's encouraging. Instead, if you did lose a case with this thing in it, you'd have a pretty good likelihood of finding it. Now, if it's stolen and somebody knows this is in it, they can remove it, all that good stuff. But in general, if it's a lost case, you probably have a pretty good chance to find it with a device like this. The power is a problem with this. So this one is rechargeable. This is the battery. The battery is a good device. And this lasts 3 days, I think. Right? And then you can recharge it. So practically a little bit touchy. And the software is all over the place, right? All these companies have their tracking software so that you can just log on to the web and type in device 123 and there it is on Fifth Street in Maine or whatever. Okay, so that's GPS and its primary use is vehicle tracking, that kind of stuff. Although now, geez, hunting, fishing, all that kind of stuff. So, at a basic level, that's good to go, right? We're good to go on what the difference between those two is. Okay. So, in my opinion, the key questions to consider, and I picked the first one because I think without it, none of it matters, is what problems are you trying to solve? You can do really neat stuff with RFID and GPS. The question is, for any reasonable price, does it solve problems that you have? You or your customers probably more importantly. Then you get into littler things like, well, do we want to track them at a case level or a tape level? Do you want to include the trucks, right, in the tracking? Do you want to have your hardware in the trucks as well, so you can tell it coming in and out of the trucks, or do you want it just at the buildings? Do you need RFID and GPS? Right? If you wanted to solve all the problems you're going to come up with, you probably need both. Maybe. Right? And then lastly is how much more is the solution worth if both the data center and your facility have it? Right? Because now you're tracking them out and in on both They're neat tools, but what problem are we trying to solve? What problems? So what I try to do, and this is Neil will help me here, I just try to lay out a very basic flow, right? These are the way tapes move through the system. They start in a data center, they move within, from the data center to some building exit. Then they hop in a truck there, just like an arrow, or a car or something, right? Then they move from the exit to the truck. Then they drive around. Then they move from the truck to the building entrance at your facility. And then they move from the entrance into the vault. So this is the places where problems can happen.
Do they move anywhere else? Is there anything missing in that list?
The one thing this doesn't include is third-party stuff. Now, so the vault could clearly be a third party, right? If you were sending it to a hot site or a DR test or something like that. But fundamentally, I think that's the path that takes take, right? So the question is, what goes wrong? What could be improved? Or where are you incredibly inefficient in each of these steps? So assuming that anybody's awake enough to contribute here.
Maybe you're showing the list.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do is break it up into each little area and try to understand, well, what problems are we trying to solve, and then quickly, what are the biggest ones? Because there's a million things that could happen. There's probably a half a dozen that really have a likelihood of happening. Okay? So this is a list that I put together with a couple of folks like yourselves a while back. But I don't want you to accept it as the right list. I really, really like you to think about what we're missing here. So to start with, and we're not going to cover the data center. If it gets lost in the data center right now, that's probably not our biggest problem, right? That's their problem. Some of the solutions we'll talk about might help them in that problem. Go ahead, Greg.
Can I add to that list the concept of not so much loss, but the wrong tapes being sent off-site? That from my perspective, that's probably the biggest potential for this technology. That if you're sending 50 tapes off-site on a given day, you want to make sure they're the 50 right tapes.
Okay. So it's the incorrect. I'll
Get it out of the software that's operated. Well, we'll look after it, right?
If you don't have to do, guys, just because you'll be able to see it better.
Yeah, okay.
I'm going to type this in here too. Now, this might not be in the perfect spot, but wrong tape leaves. Okay?
Yeah. It shows that we have observed in the movements is that
taken out and left on the dock, right? So they're reaching back to get, Ed's box. They take out Jeff's box, set it on the curb, and leave it there. It falls out when driving, right? That could be an accident, door swings open, whatever. Stolen by the driver or third party. So then it gets out of the truck. So go ahead, Brian.
Can I add to that the possibility that the driver accidentally delivers that case to another customer?
Okay, I got that one, Brian, right? Taken into another customer by mistake, right? Okay, that's what you meant, right?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't see that.
That's okay, yeah, I can probably make the paper again. So now it's gotten out of the truck, so it got to your location, to the driveway, okay, but it didn't get into the warehouse, so now it got left, out on the sidewalk or something in your facility. So it doesn't get into the warehouse, and then you get to the point where, okay, it did get in, but now it's lost in your building somewhere. And then the last one was just trying to make the point that it might not be just yourselves in the data center. It could be going to another data center. So if you're looking at this from the data center's eyes, they also are shipping stuff back and forth from the other data centers. Is there anything else of real relevance that we're missing, or is that the scenarios that you figured? The stuff we've read about, have they did anything other than this? No? They're reading.
Anything that you could add to that list that represents a problem?
I think in the vault, you kind of got it up there where it says take too long to cartridge inventory. If you misfile a tape with RF, can you really get that granular and locate
Right.
the tape?
Yeah, that's a good point. I did mention the two efficiency items. Those items are real and they do translate to security in the sense that you can find. We started a large trial with an RFID trial with a large bank where they were going to put passive tags on everything. And the biggest reason they wanted to do it, in their mind, all this stuff was great. The biggest thing was they could do an inventory relatively quickly. So that, the data center manager said, well, hey, I can sleep at night. If I do an inventory, they said they do an inventory, he said maybe once a year tops. Because it's a monstrous project for a large data center. So his opinion was, oh my God, if I could do an inventory once a week and it only took an hour, and I could go to bed every Friday night knowing that he said, oh, my babies are, in their beds, right? That was huge to that person. And then the other part is, it just makes the handoff, as you said, hey, how do we make sure you're on the wrong table, short of opening the box and checking it every single time? You run it right through the antenna and you're going to get a read of all the tapes that were in there. You marry it to the list of tapes that was supposed to be in there, and you either have a problem or not, but you know it right at the point, right? You know it when they leave the building rather than when you get back to your place.
One of the things that really permeates the whole process is if you're using RFID, if you introduce RFID to the equation, is the possibility of misreads within RFID.
Oh yeah.
So, let's say for instance you were able to ping every tape in your vault every 10 seconds to see what you had. There's the possibility that one of those tapes might not respond. And then you don't know whether or not the tape is missing or not. And to use the example that John Ulmer had, that he used on the list probably 18 months ago, where he had a lost container in his facility, and they tore the place apart for 2 days looking for it, and they told the customer then that they'd lost it, and then a year later they found it in the same facility.
Right.
Well, if you implement something that uses RFID to do this, and the RFID tells you that it's not there when in fact it is, that can create a much bigger problem.
And that's a fact. It could happen with barcoding, and we have that fact today, but you're right, it's not like if you spend the money
with barcoding, don't you have an audit trail? Let's say you scan it to a pallet, you scan it to a shelf, you scan it with 40 other boxes or 40 other tapes. At least you know where those items are. You can research other like items and have the same process. RFID, you have that same.
Well, it's more the visibility. It's the visibility issue that if you open a case and you see 20 tapes, then you scan 20 tapes. But if you don't open the case and you scan the case and it scans 19, that tape will then be lost. So you'll say, well, I didn't even pick that tape up because we scanned it and we picked up 19, when in fact you actually have it. And because you don't have that visibility aspect, that's something you add that's not there today.
I'm not sure it's better or worse than today, if you could just not scan 1, 2. I mean, well, you might have a false sense of security that you don't have today. But your point is correct.
You've got to put them on a shelf. They've got to go somewhere. You've got to scan the individuals at some particular point, regardless of whether you're using RFID or barcodes.
Unless you're storing in cases.
Yes. Yeah. But
So
then
let's do this. Help us a little bit, because I've got a few slides on that will talk about, hey, here's just some ways you can do it. You can integrate both, active and passive and GPS, and you can do some or all or none. Depending on what problem you want to solve, they make sense or don't make sense. So if we could do this, I want you to take, what about?
We're going to take about 2 minutes only. We're going to ask, can you read this list? And everybody in the room read this list. If not, we're going to invite you to come forward and you can just stand up and read it. Because we're going to assign you 5 votes to place among the 13 selections, because there's 4A up here, right? 1 through 12, 4A, so there's 13 selections. You've got 5 votes. 1/3 was 1. 5 votes amongst these 13 problems that you'd like to say are the top 5 that I'd like to solve. Or I'd like you to solve, right? So which of the 13 listed here would be among the 5 that you would say you want to prioritize? So you get 5 votes, all of the same weight. You can't put all 5 against 1. You got to spread your 5 votes among all 13. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. So just write down the number of the issue from 1 through 13 that is among your top 5. 10. 2 minutes.
Well, I'm sorry to be an anal here, but do you want to put 4A or do you want me? I don't think we wanted to put
I want the number, the top 5 numbers associated.
Right, but we don't want a number 13, we want a 4A, right? You don't want 5 to be 6, right?
Okay, 13 choices, one of them is 4A.
Okay, yeah.
So essentially you want us to write a list of 5 numbers in
I want you
order
to
of
write down
that.
5 numbers associated with the problems that are your top 5 as you look at this list.
And not the ones that you think RFID to solve. I want to know what are really the things that are most likely. Some of this stuff has a 1 in a million chance of happening. Some of it has a 1 in 100 chance of happening. I want the stuff that you think is really dangerous and could happen. The ones you're most worried about. And all you're going to do is raise your hand. You're going to go 1 through 13.
Just write down the 5 numbers, okay? Associated with the 5 top issues you want to address.
I'll shut up.
hang on. 4 by 7.
4 by itself.
So leave the data center, but doesn't get into number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. That was 4 or 8. That was 4. 4A on page. 1, 2, 3. All right. Number 5. Taken into somebody else's data center by mistake.
That's number 6.
Well, who put 5? Yes, it's wrong. Number 6. Taken into another data center by mistake. That would appear to be the big one.
You want me to help you count?
Move fast, you will notice.
Yeah, 15, that was number 6. Okay, thank you. Number 7, taken out of the top. All right, number 8 falls out when driving. Number 9, stolen by a driver third party. 10, it's out of the truck but not in the warehouse. Right. Number 11, lost in off-site storage facility. And last, lost outside data center during transport facilities. Okay, according to the skill prioritization exercise, perfect. Number 4A, number 6, number 11, number 7, and number 1 of the top 5.
What are the top 3 now?
Well, again, 4A, wrong take lead. The second highest one was number 6, which is taken the data center by mistake. Next is number 11, which was lost in off-site storage facility. Those are the top 3.
4A, 6, and 11.
11 followed by 7 and 1.
Ken,
Okay. Yeah.
I know we've already had the vote, I'm just have another one, but one of the things that I just thought of that we didn't discuss and you might want to capture is the possibility of duplicate barcodes. That if you look at something that causes a lot of problem, it's duplication, which may or may not be something that you want to add to your list.
If you want to add that to the previous video? Well, duplicate false here, yeah. And that's possible even to help that scenario. Obviously, the barcode is going to be tied to the RFID tag. I'm not positive we solved that problem. If we had an extra character in the RFID, you could sort of do a custom ID or something like that. Okay, so now let me do this. So let's spend just a couple minutes on what these different things are good for. Okay? So if you put RFID tags on every cartridge, it gives you a ton of efficiency because you don't have to constantly open the box and do the barcode scan. It would theoretically, and then the inventory thing can be done quickly. In theory, all the things you can do with RFID in this case, you could do with a barcode. If you open the case, you could scan all 20 cartridges, or you could push it through the door and have it try to find those 20 cartridges. So by itself, RFID doesn't solve that problem. It makes it easier because it's automatic. Passive RFID tags on the cases, but of course, sorry, and didn't even do the trial because to retrofit their tapes with a barcode label with an embedded RFID tag, you know, at best, you know, they have a million tapes. At best, you could do that for what, $1.50, $2 a tape? Because you got the labor to peel it on, peel it off, you got to buy the label, and it's an RFID label with a bulb there. You know, so that would add another $2 million to the project if we could do the whole thing. Well, that's just it's an efficiency thing. All they're doing is saying, I don't want to have to count how many boxes are on every pallet. I want to just bring it in and know that I got 42 TVs and I got, you know, 21 toasters or whatever. So when the driver brings the pallet into the warehouse, boom. I know there's 27 boxes on that pallet.
And that's active.
No, that's passive. Because if it's coming through the door, it'll get woken up.
And it doesn't have the ability to be far away from that scenery of the transponder.
No, it's got to go through it. Now you can have a handheld, right? So you can then walk around the warehouse and leave up the tags and count them again. That's how you do an inventory.
But does that level of inventory really mean anything in our industry? I mean, other than keeping score at the door. If I do an inventory in my vault with 50,000 tapes, great, the customer knows that the 50,000 they think are here, but it's not an inventory as to where they are on the shelf at a slot level. It's just basically no different than a pallet. It's got 40 items on it. It just says there's 40 on it, but no, you don't know which one's where. They're dealing with like items.
Well, but you can find them. If you have a handheld scanner, and you could say, I want to find tape 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can walk down the aisles, you know, and it'll be when you get 1, 2, 3, 4. If you,
Well, no, you'll get to the pallet. I mean, I've seen demonstrations of it at Anheuser-Busch, and where they're using it, and it would get you to the pallet, for example, but it was like items. You know, okay, so I got the pallet with 10 TVs or whatever, and I got there and I can pull one. In our business, we're getting down to an item this big with a unique number. It gets you to a shelf or a rack. It's not getting you down to a spot.
they could get to the tapes. They
Well, you got to kind of run like this across.
exactly. Yeah. So
Good.
it's
Which is,
not perfect.
I think they're pulling 1,000 tapes that way.
Right. So, on the cases, you got a much more manageable solution from a cost standpoint, right? It doesn't give you nearly as much information. But you could know that, you know, the proper case left at the door, or the proper case came into the door. Right? Now, of course, on your end or their end, you can do things that tie the tape to the case and things like that. But, you know, much more practical, but doesn't give you as much benefit. The active tag on a case does what I just described, but also an active tag you can find within reason. So you can't find it like you find a GPS, but if you can get within, let's say, 300 feet of a case with an active tag on it, you can, use the handheld to find it. So if you knew it was on a dock somewhere or in a warehouse, right, you had a feeling it was in your building, but just in a stack, you could go around with a wand and probably find it. Okay? A little better. Now GPS is the reason you would do GPS is that's going to allow you to find it when it fell off the truck. That kind of scenario, or was stolen. Now it's interesting when you talk to the data center manager, so we rate the problems for you guys. I've talked to a limited number of data center managers. The two that they were most worried about were the first one, which is the whole inventory. I can't find a tape in my data center one, which you guys rank high as well. And then the other one was this lost case thing, the idea that they could find it out there in the world somewhere. It's sitting on the side of the road or someone's driving, it's just in the wrong truck or something, and then you find it. So now, what I kind of said at the bottom here is, there's lots of potential here, there's also lots of caveats. Yeah, this one works pretty good, but it's ridiculously expensive. This one doesn't offer as much, but you can afford it, right? So what I try to do, real quick too, this is the other part of does this work? These are the prices, and they're out of date. As soon as you put them on the paper, they're less than $1. Active tags are maybe $20. Now, maybe 30, depending on how big a battery, it could go up to 50, but a tag like this that you might put on a case is $25 to $35 each, okay? The hardware, you can kind of figure for each door, $3,000 to $5,000, $2,000 to $5,000 for each door. Then you have to have some software that runs it, and that'll run you a couple thousand. If you wanted to do it in a truck, if you want to do it in a truck, that's another $1,000. But then you got to have some communication too. If it's in the truck, you probably want to be able to communicate back and forth in real time from the truck. You wouldn't have to, but now you're running into some cost there of a few thousand. But in general, if you wanted to set up your facility with a couple of doors, it's a $10,000 investment, maybe less. Does that just give you, at least you're not, it's not $1 million, right? It's not a thousand. GPS, go ahead, Joe.
I have a question for the group. Has anybody done any meaningful testing on going to the roadways and granularity to get the accuracy?
We did, and it, in a turtle case, it actually works pretty darn good. That's not a sales pitch for turtle cases, but turtle cases force them to line them up because they do have to be aligned. So if all the labels are up, that's beneficial. So in a case, if you're in a case and the tapes are upside down, sideways, then it does not do particularly well. And not well, probably.
Going to the roadway?
Yeah.
How many who won that? One person, a person carrying one?
That was based on 20 back cases.
So one case was going to say, you roll it through on
On a big cart.
we call trolleys.
The problem with the trolleys that we had at this facility is they were metal, so you couldn't use them at all. You had zero. And now there are things you can do though. There are, what do you call them, flood boxes or whatever. So, one way is to just walk through the doorway. Another way is you can put the case in a flooded, a very small area antenna activator, and your results will improve. Okay, on the GPS side, this thing costs about $500, $400. But you have to have the cell phone account, right? Because that thing has to communicate. You're basically buying another cell phone account. No, this was, you could use two different cell providers, like AT&T and I can't remember who else. But there's a variety of them out there. Okay, so that just sets the stage a little bit for pricing. Yep, correct?
I'll just point out to you that the only commercially available software product that's on the market today starts at $40,000.
For,
So where you've got enterprise data manager software, the iMation product that does this starts at $40,000.
well, we worked with a company called Access International that their enterprise software was in that $4,000 to $4,000 range.
And they're currently selling it into the data center market.
Yeah, well, they're not selling any, but they would if you had it. Yeah, so that's the software that basically, tracks the media. You can assign, there's neat stuff you can do, right? If you did this, you could put tags on all the laptops, you could put tags on all your people, you can tie your people to, so you can tie it, you have a badge, right, that's got RFID, and I'm Ken Schneider, and I have authorization to bring tapes in and out of the building, or I don't. So no alarm can go off. There's all kinds of neat stuff you can do.
The only concern I have here is that the iMation product, which Iron Mountain sell, right, so this is the product that's out there in the market today, that's how much this product costs.
Iron Mountain doesn't sell that nation.
Ken, who does the nation use? G&H?
The answer is, I'll leave the sort of ambiguous answer. We sell some of my Mason's products, but I don't know what some things talking about.
Nation uses G&H, not Access.
Yeah, I don't know who their bank is, if you will, but yeah, that could be right. I mean, this is a system we spec out, and I mean, these are real. We delivered a product that was based on these prices.
So you have an implementation using this pricing model that is rolled out somewhere in production?
No, we did a trial. They paid us $29,000. We did all the stuff, got the hardware all ready, and when they realized how much it was going to cost to retrofit all the cartridges, they said, we're stopping. So they literally didn't even do it. We tested it, and it worked, right? When you carry stuff out, it will find it. But they didn't do it because retrofitting all those cartridges was...
So the only workable solution that's got any penetration at all, as I understand, must be the animation product.
Well, we could do the animation product, in my opinion, very easily. That's an active tag. Well, but see, they also talk about GPS, so I don't know enough about all the things that animation is considering in their product. Because some of it's a GPS in there as well. Okay.
I mean, I would just say the basic product is not working.
Yeah, well,
No,
but that's,
because it failed.
yeah.
It's pulled. I can tell you the product manager, 23 years ago, I can tell you who it is. I can call Tim York right now. It does not work. They pulled it. They tested it, they pulled it, it does not work.
Did they try and do a TMS interface with it?
I don't know what the interface was with it. They tested at the largest bank. They went against speed recovery, access. They failed. They do not have the business.
Which product are you referring to?
This is the data guard product.
That a Jake tried marketing me a new box that they designed similar to the Perm-a-Store box, but he shipped it better to track that. I gave him one of those. They cost $104 a piece for 20.
They're not actively selling.
I got it.
Well, they sell the case, right?
And because they're not actively selling the data guard.
The tracking system. Okay, guys, I'm running over the time here, and I don't want to do that. What I was going to do is take it through here now and say, okay, what could we do? Right? These are the different things we could do. You know, you could be as simple. Some people, it might be as simple as a GPS transponder in a case that's their hypercritical. You know, this is the stuff that can be lost if there's such a thing. And you could track it, and their likelihood of losing the problems associated with it. So this might be worth something that we got on the committee that you guys can.
True. And what I'd suggest maybe we do, if people are interested, is we look as a group at putting out a press release calling on people like the LTO consortium to start embedding passive chips that are readable and usable by us into their cartridges.
Right, because you're right, the one they put in there, you have to be within a, inch to read, right? So some of those things, you've heard of RFID chips that you can put in your kids and things like that, or your dog, or whatever. Well, those you have to read, right up close. These, obviously, you got some distance. Okay, so we'll put that up. Hey, I appreciate your input. It's, there is potential here, there's no question, but there is not a solution on the market that is feasible right now. Okay? All right, thank you.
Hey, Brad. Get out of the way.
Okay, guys, thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. It's a great presentation. Thank you all. What we got next is another schedule change. The next session is going to be on evil. Right.
It's gonna be me. We'll leave it at that.
Jeff is going to do our next presentation. And